The atoms or elementary particles themselves are not real. They form a world of potentialities or possibilities, rather than one of things or facts. Quantum theory provides us with a striking illustration of the fact that we can fully understand a connection, though we can only speak of it in images and parables. In the strict formulation of the law of causality, if we know the present, we can calculate the future. It is not the conclusion that is wrong, but the premise. The first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. Science no longer rests on solid rock. It rests on the shifting sand of paradox. An expert is someone who knows some of the worst mistakes that can be made in his subject and how to avoid them. There is a difference between what we know and what is real. The violent reaction to the advances of modern physics is understandable because the common man's everyday concepts of reality are contradicted by quantum theory. We have to remember that what we observe is not nature in itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning. Every word or concept, clear as it may seem to be, has only a limited range of applicability. The history of physics is not only a sequence of discoveries, it is also a sequence of refutations. We cannot observe an electron's position without changing its momentum, and we cannot observe its momentum without changing its position. Whenever we state the basic laws of physics, we are not speaking of nature itself, but rather about nature as we can understand it. Science progresses not only by the answers it finds, but also by the questions it raises. The meaning of the words always depends on the language in which they are spoken and on the person who speaks them. A scientist does not really aim at an immediate application of his knowledge. His reward consists in the pleasure of discovering something new and the possibilities that open up for future generations. In science, the crucial factor is not the mere collection of facts, but the ability to recognize patterns and make predictions. Even the foundations of mathematics and logic themselves rest upon certain assumptions that we accept but cannot prove. Reality is in some sense created by the act of observation. Knowledge cannot be separated from the knower. The uncertainty principle is not an indication of our ignorance, but an inherent feature of nature. Classical physics represents that idealization in which we pretend that we can observe nature without disturbing it. Every experiment destroys some of the knowledge of the system which was obtained by previous experiments. The world thus appears as a complicated tissue of events, in which connections of different kinds alternate or overlap or combine, and thereby determine the texture of the whole. What we perceive are only shadows cast by deeper realities. Physics does not simply describe and explain nature. It is part of the interplay between nature and ourselves. Modern physics teaches us that we must learn to think about reality in a new way. Reality and knowledge are interconnected, and one cannot exist without the other. In our scientific inquiry, we must be aware that we are participants in the very reality we seek to understand. Mathematics and physics are not independent disciplines, but two aspects of the same quest for truth. If nature leads us to mathematical forms of great simplicity and beauty, we cannot help thinking that they are true, that they reveal a genuine feature of nature. The discoveries of modern physics have made it clear that nature is more like a great thought than like a great machine. Man has to recognize that he is part of nature, and that his understanding of it involves his own mind as well. The whole of science is nothing more than a refinement of everyday thinking. The most valuable discoveries are not those that answer questions, but those that raise new ones. In quantum mechanics, we find that the observer is not independent of the observed. It is not surprising that our common-sense intuitions break down at the quantum level, for they were formed in a world governed by classical physics. The deepest philosophical problems arise where physics meets philosophy, where observation meets reality. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. The structure of reality is far more subtle than our senses lead us to believe. The more precisely we measure one quantity, the less precisely we can measure another.